Hello and welcome back to my channel. For this card, I am using several Lawn Fawn products to make some non-traditional Christmas cards. To start with, I'm going to take the plaid stencil from Lawn Fawn, and I am going to ink the first stencil up with some Candied Apple Distress Oxide ink. And I'm trying to achieve a candy cane sort of look here. For this, I don't really need to worry about inking the middle of the panel because I know already that I am going to have a panel on top of this in the center. Now I do have two pieces of tape here to try to kind of hold down my stencil. It didn't work. As you see, I moved the stencil around, or I guess the paper around under the stencil a whole bunch because I accidentally kept moving it. Super annoying, but luckily it's easy to line up. With the first stencil completed, I am going to take Lucky Clover ink and I'm going to use the second stencil and kind of line it up in the white areas of the previous stencil lines. And I'm just going to ink these little lines up in green. Alright, and here you can see I did get wise at some point and decided to tape my panel down to my work surface. Alright, now I have Critters on the Savannah, and I have stamped out several of the zebras. I don't show how I color all of them on camera, just this green one, but it's the same process for the red as well. So I have a very, very light green, which I'm going to use for some details like the snout and the inner ear. I'm going to use the cool grays to kind of shade the white parts of the zebra, which this is all pretty minimal. And then once I have finished this, I do go in with my G00, and I decided that that was way too light for the stripes. So you can pretty much disregard this part or kind of imagine that this was my mid-tone because ultimately that's what I switched it to. And here, this is the G02, the one I decided I liked better for the main part of the stripes. Now I'm going in just with a little bit of G05, and I do blend this back out, but I don't show you on camera, and I just do that with the G02, where the G02 and the G05 meet. Now for the hooves, I do the darkest G0, and then I bring in the G09 to add shading to the hooves. And now if you look at a real zebra, you will notice that the muzzle has sort of a black or dark gray tint to it. So this is why I added the green. To add a little bit of Christmas magic to this whole thing, I am adding some Wink of Stella in the clear glitter. And I'm just going over the white parts of the zebra. I try to show this, but honestly it doesn't catch very well on camera. But it really is glittery in real life. And here are my 3 completed zebras. You can kind of see the glitter just a little bit. Now here I have one in a partial rectangle die cut, and this is the stitched rectangles from Lawn Fawn. And I'm going to use one of the stitched hillside borders and create a little bit of a snowy hillside to go at the bottom of this white panel. Next, I'm going to use my Minty Fresh ink from Lawn Fawn, and I'm going to stamp some little snowflakes all over the background. And for this, I'm using a Simon Says stamp and Lawn Fawn exclusive, which means this is no longer available. But it had the sentiment in it that I wanted, as far as like the size and everything, which was Merry Christmas. And it did have a couple of snowflakes, so I decided to use the ones that were in this stamp set. I know there are plenty of Lawn Fawn stamp sets that have little snowflakes though. So I'm just going to randomly stamp these along the background to give it a snowy look. Now I'm going to stamp my sentiment in just the black ink that I used to stamp my images. I had contemplated using red or green ink for this and then opted out of that as I already had a lot of red and green on the card. And another thing is when you use multiple colors, you really don't want equal representation of each color on the card because it just doesn't look as well as if you add more of one and less of another. I decided to add a little bit of glitter brush to the top of my snowbank. And I was desperately trying to show you here, and it just was not working. It does not pick up well if you're not shining a flashlight or something directly on it. It looks glittery in real life, but it's subtle, I guess. After adhering that down, I'm going to place my zebras, and I was going to do green, red, green. There we go. And I kept the second green one up there for a second before I placed the red one so that they would be fairly evenly spaced. And then this whole thing is going to be glued onto, oh wait, nope, I guess I did one other thing. I added some very pale green shadows underneath each of the zebra's back feet to make it look like they're not just floating. And then this gets glued directly in the center of my little candy cane striped panel. And excuse the toddler hands, he always has to help me craft. And now that card is complete, and I have another one. And to start with, I'm going to take this Croc My World stamp set, and I'm going to stamp the crocodile, have that cut out, and I am going to use some YG markers. And these are YG 05, 07, and 09. And I'm going to keep the coloring very simple, keeping the shading mostly to the bottom of the crocodile and on the legs that are farthest away from us. I used to always do my shading in the very lightest color. That way I could keep the shading I liked and then get rid of the shading I didn't. But after so long of coloring, I've gotten really comfortable with mostly knowing where I want my shadows to go. If this isn't you and you are uncomfortable with your shading, you can always do the lightest to the darkest instead of darkest to the lightest. After my darkest color, I'm going in with my mid-tone, and I'm kind of extending out the shadow areas a little bit. And I say mid-tone, and honestly this doesn't end up being the mid-tone really. When I color, a lot of times my lightest color is the predominant color in my images. Occasionally I do better than that, but right here you can see it's mostly this very light color. And I'm just going to keep going back and forth between the colors until I get a blend that I like. For some added interest and detail, I'm adding some of the darkest YG marker as little dots here and there on the crocodile. Now here, I'm showing you a Santa hat. I don't remember which set I stamped this from, but Fawn has several with Santa hats in it. And I've just used some R markers for the hat and then a C marker for the brim and the pom-pom thing at the end. I have cut out a rectangle of Spiffy Speckles paper. And now I'm going to stamp my sentiment. This is from Sweet Christmas. And I'm going to stamp Have A, and I'm trying to keep the word sweet out of this because I don't need to stamp that. And then I'm going to stamp the word Christmas at the bottom. I'm going to create the rest of my sentiment using die cut letters. For my letters and my bigger rectangle, I am using the Knit Picky 12 by 12 pattern paper, and I have this green kind of knitted sweater pattern, and I am going to use the large side for my rectangle, and then for the letters I'm going to cut them from the smaller pattern side, and I'm using Henry's ABCs to do this. So that's what it looks like. And my sentiment's going to read, have a snappy Christmas. My original idea was Merry Christmas and a Snappy New Year, but it wouldn't all fit. So here I'm just trying to figure out how I want everything to be laid out on my panel. Once I'm happy with how it looks, I'm going to glue it down. And then last minute I decided to kind of turn the center panel a little bit crooked. I kind of liked the way it looked, and I never really do this with my cards. Anyway, there is a final look at both completed non-traditional cards. I hope you guys enjoyed them. I will be back with another video soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!